Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our entitled people. In today's episode, entitled sister tries to steal my money. Woman on small cruise ship quickly gets labeled the first person to be voted off the ship because of her entitled behavior. Older brother said he needed rent money but just wanted to pay for his vacation. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled sister tries to steal my money. I don't know if this story really belongs here, but uneasy face. At the time I was 15 and my sister was 9. So I had been working mowing lawns and babysitting during the summer to save up for a phone. I had gotten home from working one day and went to my room to put my money in my piggy bank only to find it empty on the ground and my sister sitting on my bed counting my money. I figured she was just curious on how much I saved up or something, so I asked her why she had my money. She looked up at me, put the money in her pocket and started to walk off. "Oh, I just need some money for the mall." I stopped her from walking out and asked her how much she took. "Oh, only 200, don't worry." I took the money out of her pocket and yelled, "What do you mean only 200? That is all I have. If you need money, ask mom or dad." She turned around and started crying and screaming, saying that what's mine is hers, sharing is caring, who cares if she takes a little bit of money, and other ridiculous things until my parents walked in asking what was going on. Before I could answer, my sister yelled that I wouldn't give her anything when she only asked for a couple dollars. At this, my parents became furious at me and told me to give my sister some money and that it was not a big deal. I was forced to give my sister $10. I was of course mad. At least it was not $200. Later at dinner, my sister would not come out to eat, so my mom went to go check on her only to find he in my room counting my money. My sister didn't realize mom was outside the door, so she put the money in her pocket and tried to walk out the door only to find an angry mom standing there. My sister, trying not to get in any more trouble, told my mom that who cares if she takes my money and that it should belong to her too. My mom of course took my money back and I got my $10 back too. Since then my sister has only tried to take my money a couple times, but it never worked. Parents that give one kid the other child's belongings are the worst. Adults should know better. I come from a family that's big enough that no one would be surprised if my parents were just tired of parenting. However, they were responsible and fair people, so they still stepped in and corrected/disciplined as necessary. I would be in trouble if I took a book from my sister's room without permission. $200? Goodbye, freedom. Hello, doing my sister's chores for who knows how long so I can see what it's like to earn $200. Wow, I very much hope your sister has grown up and is no longer entitled. I'd like to give her the benefit as she was young at the time. Use some of that money to buy a lockbox safe for your money. Screw your sister, sounds as bad as mine was when we were growing up. My GCB tried this shit too. He had spent all of his allowance and tried to raid my piggy bank for everything I had managed to save from my allowance. I threw a rolling pin at his head and got my money back. Your parents better start disciplining the 9-year-old thief before the stupid sister decides to try that in school. She might not enjoy the label, the bullying or juvie if someone presses charges. Woman on small cruise ship quickly gets labeled the first person to be voted off the ship because of her entitled behavior. My father passed in 1999, and in 2000 my mother took me on a 3-week trip to remote areas of the western South Pacific, including to some very remote islands where no white person had set foot in almost a decade. Not all were that remote, but most of them were. After flying in from Cairns, Australia to edited Port Moresby, New Guinea, we were taken by minibus to do some touristy stuff for a few hours before being taken to the ship. One of the stops was at a large outdoor artisan shop, and we were told that we had about half an hour to look around and buy some things before getting back on our bus and going to the ship. We were told what time we needed to be back on the minibus, and when the bulk of the group was getting back on, one woman, who I'll call EP for entitled passenger, had already planted herself in the front with several huge bags of souvenirs that she had placed around her and in her lap, sticking out into the aisle. The guide was a young woman who was only with us for a few hours and evidently didn't feel comfortable taking control of the situation, so after everyone else had to partly climb over her bags to get further into the bus, several passengers, in a group that was all 60+ years old except me, the baby at 42, had to perch on very uncomfortable jump seats that folded down from the main seats. And yes, since I was the baby, I volunteered to be one of those people. That was just the beginning. At each of the islands we stopped at, they welcomed us with cultural activities, always including dances. After a couple of islands, it became obvious that EP was going to make a habit of going straight to the handcraft tables, perching on her cane/tripod chair, and ordered the natives to bring to her any items from the tables that she wished to see. By the time the dances were finished and the rest of us got there, she had already bought dozens of items, leaving an insufficient number of pieces for the number of passengers that were left. Then we went to Rabaul, New Britain, where there is a traditional fire dance performed called baining. The performers dance through fire while wearing giant masks that are typically 5 foot high, 3 wide, and 1 to 3 from front to back. There were 6 dancers, so 6 masks, and somebody asked that if they would be able to make more in time for their next scheduled performance, would they be willing to bring these masks to the ship afterwards so people could have a chance to buy them. Sometime after the dances were over, one of the performers drove the masks in a truck to the ship, where EP had been waiting for them on the dock, and proceeded to buy 3 of the 6 masks while other passengers who had gone back to their cabins were still figuring out the masks had arrived and were making their way back down to the dock. That night her roommate was moved into an empty single cabin at no extra cost because there was literally no more room for her or her stuff in their cabin, and within a few more days housekeeping was unable to get into the cabin to clean. At the end of the trip, the cruise company offered to help people box up and weigh their packages of souvenirs to send home, and EP had an absolute fit when she was told that they didn't have the boxes or the staff to help her pack up her cabin full of souvenirs, especially the masks. I have no idea how she managed to get all that stuff shipped back home after we landed. My mother had traveled with this company many times before with my father, and there was always one owner of the company on every cruise, so they knew her pretty well and were all very open with her about stuff going on her cruises. The owner on that one told my mother that EP was definitely blacklisted, and their staff back home had already been instructed that if she ever tried to book another trip with them again, they were to tell her they were full. Edited, some of you are so privileged, ignorant, and unimaginative that you apparently can't even conceive of the possibility that there are still people in the world who live in such remote places that they didn't even have pens and had never seen a video camera by the year 2000, and your only way to resolve your cognitive dissonance is to assume I made all of this up. Edited again, someone accurately pointed out that I mentioned nothing further about voting her off the ship. Although it was almost unanimous among both passengers and crew/staff, of course it was only a virtual vote and desire. It was obviously impossible to follow through on because they couldn't just abandon her on one of the islands and go sailing off, or throw her and all her souvenirs overboard. And again, for anyone who doesn't believe this really happened, I'm a chronically ill, moderately disabled 66-year-old who since late 2007 has been in pain from multiple symptoms of a disease called mast cell activation syndrome. It wasn't even identified as a disease till 2006, and even though my symptoms have been traced back 60 years, I wasn't properly diagnosed with it until late summer 2022 after accumulating 8 autoimmune diseases, 5 of them rare, and all of them debilitating to one degree or another, 2 of them severely. I even started dying from those 20 years ago last month, but emergency surgery saved my life. On top of that, while trying to manage my own condition, I'm also solely responsible for managing the life of my 31-year-old autistic son who's way more physically disabled than I am and who will never be able to support himself. So seriously, F***CKU. I have more than enough drama in my life on a daily basis for me to have the time, mental capacity, emotional energy, or motivation to make shit up. I'm only on Reddit because I'm mostly homebound for the last 19+ months, bored out of my mind and in pretty significant chronic pain, and besides streaming services, social media is my main distraction and social outlet, as pathetic as it is when dealing with idiots like you. No white person has been for a decade. Yet there are artisan shops? And they just happen to be doing culturally significant dances anytime that bus rolled up. Why did you make this up? What a weird thing to do. Why would you believe I made that up? Which part of this do you not believe? That I went to remote areas of the South Pacific? That there was someone in the group who was a horrible fellow traveler and was banned from further travel? TBH, her buying shed loads is at least supporting the local economy. She might be insufferable to fellow tourists, but she's a literal goldmine for locals. I agree, and when the expedition leaders talked to some of the locals they were told that, but they were also apologetic that they didn't have enough made ahead of time to sell to more of the passengers, and they hadn't wanted to be rude and tell her she couldn't buy up so much ahead of the rest of the group getting there. I hate to break it to you, but the least probable part of the story is she was buying out local handicrafts. That stuff is never actually local handicrafts. It's all mass-produced and then the sellers buy it at a store. If they run out, they just step out to the wholesale shop that is always in the area and buy more. I always try to find that plane and buy in bulk from them to bring junk back to people that actually want wise souvenirs. Older brother said he needed rent money but just wanted to pay for his vacation. First, I'm 31M, the middle child of 3. I have 2 brothers, one younger, 25M, and one older, 38M. My brothers and I have never been close, and I was often overlooked by my parents and most relatives compared to them. Not really relevant to the story, but just to draw a picture. About 3 years ago, I was approached by my parents and older brother for a loan to help him pay rent. Me and my sibling have never been close, and after moving out around late 2015, I was already pretty distant with them by that point due to many years of bullshit, but that's an entire series of stories. However, I was led to believe my brother was in a really bad financial situation and that he wasn't able to afford his rent. Back then I knew he recently got back to pursue an academic degree while still working a shitty job, so it made sense. I agreed to give them the money, but I made it clear it was a loan. I will need that money back. All 3 agreed, and my parents even said that they will pay me back in a few weeks. They both had high-paying jobs, so I didn't have any reason to be suspicious. So I wrote my brother a check, stating that the very specific amount of money was to help paying for 3 months of rent. About $2,500. A few weeks go by. I decided to just be patient and considerate towards my brother, knowing his financial situation wasn't the best. However, a few weeks became a month and then 2, yet there's no word from my brother nor parents. I reached out but was told to be patient, and my mom even had the audacity to call me a psycho. It's a common thing she did whenever she was being confronted by people. Being relatively clueless about legal stuff back then, I gave up and decided to move on. However, a couple of weeks later I get contacted by one of my cousins telling me how amazing I was for paying for my brother's vacation with Cousin's sister. She told me they'd been planning on going for months and he was the only one who had trouble affording a ticket. Here's how the conversation went: and me, C, cousin, OB, older brother, C's, cousin's sister. Me, C, what trip? C, they'd been planning on going abroad for months now, but OB was the only one who couldn't afford it. Me, wait, what? C, he didn't tell you? Me, he told me he needed money to cover rent. C, I don't understand? I then told her I had to go, so that's where the convo ended. Next, I immediately called my brother up, demanding to know what was going on. He basically laughed in my face and thanked me for paying for his vacation. When I told him that I was in to pay me back, he then told me to go F***ck myself before blocking my number as well as on Facebook. I was furious. Next day at my work, I decided to ask around friends in our legal team. They referred me to a really good lawyer who even agreed to represent me for a lower price than what he usually charges. I asked him to wait because I needed to compile a few things first. First, I've gathered all phone recordings, screenshots of every text concerning the loan and what it was intended for, pictures from his trip, had his girlfriend, she didn't go on the trip, email me the receipts of both hotel room and plane ticket as well as texts from him regarding how much spending money he left with, getting written a statement from his landlord that OB never had troubles paying rent. Note: 1, GF had no idea what was going on, but we get along quite well, so she agreed on helping. 2, in my country it is legal to record people and phone calls as long as you are part of the conversation. I decided to give my brother one final chance before taking him to court. I then texted my dad, remember, OB has me blocked, asking him to have my brother call me and pay back the loan, otherwise I'm taking him to court. Dad got nervous and handed the phone to my mom, who flipped out after I told her what I'm planning on doing. She stuck to the psycho remarks as well as going for the "but we're a family" shtick, as well as "can't you just do one thing for your brother?" and "when did your brother had ever asked you for anything?" which is when I ran the oh so long list in my head of when my brother did ask, demanded and took me for things. I finished the call telling them OB better contact me today and hung up. Not even an hour later my brother calls me screaming, calling me every name in the book, threatening to beat me up, to sue me for harassing his girlfriend, stalking him and so on and so on. I once again told him to pay me back for everything, otherwise I'll be seeing in court. OB told me to go f*ck myself and to watch my back before he hung up. Yes, this call has been recorded also. After a few weeks we meet up in court. My brother's lawyer attempts a dismissal, all while he along my brother are trying to portray me as only doing this for attention. I get questioned by both lawyers, evidence were presented, the judge looks less and less happy with my family, mom keeps telling me how ashamed I should be for doing this to my family, blah blah blah. The judge ruled in my favor as my brother not only had no evidence but had also lied in his testimony. I was to be paid the full amount of the check as well as court fees. After that I've went no contact with both my parents and older brother, changed my phone number and address. Me and my younger brother still talk but have a very minimal contact. Most of my relatives took my parents' side, saying I shouldn't have taken them to court and it was cruel. My grandparents on both sides, to my surprise, said I've done the right thing, as well as my mom's sister, my favorite aunt, have also taken my side. I haven't spoken to any of them for over 3 years. Mom and dad have tried contacting me before I switched numbers, but it's never to apologize other than guilt-tripping me about the whole thing. Good for you. Should tell your parents, how could cheat me like this, I'm family. Did he ever pay you back, and the court fees? If so, cut him, and your parents, off. I had a relative do this. Told me it was for a mortgage payment, that he'd pay me back, offered property as surety for it. Found out years later it was for his idiot kid, in his 30s, bail money for manufacturing serious drugs, third-time arrest for it, he spent several years in prison, and that he didn't even own the property that he offered as surety. I didn't get anything in writing because he was family. Eventually, I was in a situation where I needed the money and tried to get him to repay me. He ghosted me, and I found out he'd been bad-mouthing me to all my relatives. I also found out that this relative had a long history of ripping off relatives and employers and was lucky not to be in prison himself. By the time I found all this out, the time limit for court action had passed. So I'm out some serious money, and my reputation among some of my relatives is shot. Lesson to be learned: never lend money, even to relatives. If you do, get everything in writing, everything detailed about when it's to be paid back, surety, etc., and get it notarized. Your family seems insufferable. Good for you, OP, they deserved it. We definitely see now which were the golden children of the family, don't we? Great to see you stuck up for yourself and got your money back, OP, and hopefully that pack of entitled clowns stays out of your life for good now. You'll be better off without them. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.